Hi everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to Woolly Wednesday again. It's a lovely day today and I hope you all are having a great day. Can't believe I just said y'all, I don't know where that came from. But anyway, today we're going to spend some time talking about the steps I used to make my forest flora, and we're gonna do as much as we can of a binding demo and talk about how I made the pinwheels and some hand quilting. So a few things to talk about today. So thanks for joining me. This is Forest Flora. If you haven't seen it yet, been working on it for quite a while. So I am hand quilting in around my applique, and that's not something I do very often. But you know, why not? It's going pretty quickly. I'm doing a large stitch. Hi Lynn, thanks for coming today. And I'm going to show you how I do that. We'll talk about how I made the pinwheels and how I do binding. So I hope that's enough to fill everybody's day. So before we go too much further, I have on our discount code today, I'll show you. I have the kit. Okay, so the kit, the pattern cover isn't done because I need to finish this so I can photograph it, but everything else is done, just waiting for that. So the pattern and all the kits are available to order on the website, and they're on the special for this week, 25% off, so that's good. So I just want to show you what you can get. So you can get the pattern. Hi Kim. Oh, isn't that fun to get a package in the mail? Thank you so much for ordering. I appreciate everybody who supports my business. Okay, so on the Forest Flora, just FYI, the circles are all pre-cut, as if you saw me last week. Now I'm cutting circles. Hi Marcia, thanks for stopping in today. So the circles and the leaves down here, you can see them in there. They're all pre-cut, ready to go. So those are in the kit, and then you can get a kit with just a pattern and the gray background and the pre-cuts. Okay, so that's one kit if you want to go the basic route. Oh, and the fabrics for the pinwheels. Okay, those are in one kit, I think. And then there is an embellishment kit you can get, and it has, put this down, it has those things, plus it has the pearl cotton. So I used these 3 colors of pearl cotton on my stitching around these circles to make the flowers, and we demoed that a few weeks ago. And then you also get the cotton braid. So there's 5 colors of cotton braid that I used in this project. And if you haven't seen those videos or you weren't watching, let's see if we can get it up close. You can see I used the cotton braid around in that circle. Here it's ruched, and here in the stems it's ruched. Hi Linda, thanks for coming today. And I put it here, ruched it on these leaves. So that is the YLI cotton braid. And not sure what week that was, but it's back in the Facebook Live posts, or it might be easier to find it on my YouTube page, or even on in the online store. You can go to the gallery or the videos page, and that should be in there too. So you can see the demonstration on how to use that braid. So you can get the braid in the kit and the wool thread. I use, I think, 7 colors of my wool thread to do this applique, and it's all available in kits. So that's on special this week, as well as all of the YLI braid. So even if you don't want to order this kit, you can get the braid 25% off. All the circles, the pre-cut circles, I included them again this week, 25% off. All my wool thread. Trying to remember what else. Now, I put it right on the home page of my online store, so it's easy to see what's on special. And the coupon code is kind of depressing, but it's SNOW25. And if you live in the Midwest, you know why I picked that, or if you just saw the news. Man, we got dumped on yesterday. We got about 7 inches. It's crazy. I'm not even usually home this time of year. Is on the way to Houston. Today I'd be driving to Houston. So this year I have to stick it out in the cold weather. But okay, so SNOW25 is the coupon code for all those things, 25% off this week. All right. And our door prize. So if you are new again, if you comment on the video or like it or love it or share it or place an order today, you get your name in the drawing. And I literally put names in and draw them out. So we've even had some people win more than once. If I don't draw your name out, I just leave the name in there. So you just get multiple chances of winning. But the door prize for this week is going to be a kit for the holly and ornaments. I'll show you. It's just a little 8x10, so you could even put it in a picture frame, an 8x10 frame, or you can mount it on Peltex. So it's stiff and it'll stand up on a stand or just leaned up against something, or you can just hang it on the wall like this. So the kit has the wool for the applique and the background in it. You can see there, and the pattern. So that's the drawing this week. Hi Gwen, thanks for coming again. Okay, so I want to show you now how I'm doing this quilting. So I always have to maneuver my lights around to get some good light so I can show you. So I hope you can see this. I am just quilting with this gray. This is my wool thread, and this is the size 15, not the bigger size 8. Got a knot in the end. And let's see if I can show. I don't know if it's going to show up because I can take some close-up pictures though and post them, but on here to do it live, it's hard to see it show up. So I've just been stitching on the background around my applique, so around the leaves and around the circles. So that's all I'm doing. But I'll show you how I do it, because if you are worried about this, it's not like hand quilting on cotton where it's going to show up and you need to be so precise about your stitches being the same length and all that business. That doesn't sound like fun to me, and that's just a little stressful. So let's see, I'm going to go along this line. So I'm just going to get my needle from the bottom here and pull it up. So I'm ready to go. Now I'm going to move the camera. You guys know how that goes, don't you? Don't want to get seasick. All right. Hi, Helen. Thanks for coming. All right, are you ready to flip? Here we go. Flipping you over. Okay. So here you can see where I'm coming up, hopefully. I tried to get my lights good here. That light in there. And you can see I'm just holding it loose. So some people hand quilt in a frame, but I learned to hand quilt just loose like this in my lap without a frame. I find it to be much easier. I could not get little stitches with it tight in a frame. So I'm my stitches, these are not little. Maybe you can see right here along this edge. They're big. They're a little more than an 1/8 inch, or maybe about an 1/8 inch long, and about that far apart. They are not tiny stitches. They are big old rustic hand quilting stitches. Okay, so I just stick this down where you can see it. Stick my needle in here, and I'm just going to run right along this ruching I did with that braid. Needle in, and then just give it a little rock. You can see it come up, rock it back down in, and then when I can feel it underneath, I rock it back up. Pull it through. And this really isn't intended to show up a lot. You'll be able to see a little texture, but it's just really holding the pieces together. See, just rock and I can get a few, you see there, a few stitches on my needle. And they're not even, and I don't care. Okay, so it doesn't really even show up that much, so it doesn't really matter. I'll show you how else I quilted this. So I stitched in the ditch right along here, and I have this little piece of gray batik here, and that is because I screwed up and I cut my background too small. So the directions do not have you putting this on, because the directions have you not screwing up. So in case you do screw up like I did, I just put a little piece on to make it the right size so that my pinwheels will fit. So I stitched in the ditch, and I stitched in the ditch along here, and I stitched down the middle of my pinwheels. Then you can see I just did a basting stitch around the edge with my batting and my backing on there. Okay. And then I figured that I've got some big space here, and depending on your batting, you generally don't want your quilting more than a couple inches apart, just to hold it together. But this is small. It's just going to hang on the wall. It's not such a big deal. You just want it secured so that when it's hanging, your applique is not kind of falling away. So I think if I stitch around here, I've got, about 3-inch gap here, but it's all stitched around the edge, and I think that's going to work out just fine. And down here, I'm just going to stitch around all these things, and you could also see that I have straight pins in here, and that's fine. It's working out just fine for this little project, but if it were a bigger quilt, I would not do that because you can get stuck with them. All right, so that is how I'm quilting, and like I said, I'll take some close-up pictures and post those so maybe you can see more detail. Oh, I want to show you how doesn't it hurt my finger? Oh, no, actually, I have found that if I use a thimble, I can put a thimble on this finger, and then I end up using my other finger. I'll show you again how I do it. I'm not going to quilt like a 8-hour day or anything. So, can you see? It's in my fingernail. It's not on my finger. That would hurt. I don't like that. So I use my fingernail, and I just use that to push. And because this is my regular chenille needle, it's not a skinny little quilting needle that can poke a hole in your fingernail. This needle doesn't do that. So no harm done to my finger. All's good. Good question, Kim. Thanks for asking that. Okay, I want to show you how I put on a hanging sleeve, because that is something I always like to add. So I have this piece of fabric. I'm flipping this over to the back. So this is the top. Make sure it's the top. Yeah. This is the top of the little hanging. And this doesn't have to be the same fabric. You can use any fabric. So I have this piece. It is 6 inches wide, and it's just about an inch or so longer than total, about an inch and a half longer than the width of my little wall hanging. So I'll just show you one side. I folded in half, so now it's about 3 inches wide. And we're going to line it up here at the top. But because I like to do this with as little sewing as possible, line up the top. Before I fold that up, I'm going to fold the inside in. The inside. The outside edge fold in, so that I have about an inch of the quilt showing. I'm doing the other side. And then I'm going to fold it up. Okay, so now I've got a nice folded edge here, and I don't sew that, so I don't find that to be necessary. Get this all lined up with the top edge. And I love these Wonder Clips. Okay, put a couple more in there. So on both sides, I've got a little extra sticking out there. So if you put a slat board in, or a little dowel rod, whatever you put in there, it can stick out. And I just put a nail in the wall and hang it on there. This one needs to come in a little bit more on my other side. Okay, so I have that all in place. And then what I will do later is I just hand stitch this folded edge in place. And this edge gets sewn in with my binding. All right, so flip it back over. Let's talk about the binding. We're going to move over to the sewing machine in a bit, and I'll show you the pinwheels there. Okay, so this is my binding. I like to do a 2 1/4 inch strip. So I cut my strips 2 1/4 inches. And you can see my seam here. I'm going to show you what I do. I like to have a bias seam, because then when it's folded, your seam is spread out from here to here. It's not all in one place. So it reduces the bulk on your binding when you sew it on. So this is how I do that. We'll pretend these, it's just easier to see, I thought, if I have different fabrics. So if you have 2 strips of binding and you need to sew them together, instead of just sewing them a seam like this and having it be straight, and then you've got all that seam in the same place, it gets really thick. So I line them up, make sure that they are right sides together, okay? And then I line it up like this, a 90-degree angle, and then I fold this top one over and make it straight. So I do that just to reinforce in my own head that I have that seam going the right way, because I want one long continuous strip. So when I bring it back, you can see my line. And then I would go to the sewing machine and sew that line. And if you don't want to make the line, you can just sew from this corner down to this corner of the underneath one, right there. But I find it much easier if I press that line in and then I have a guide. Then you just cut away your excess and it would look like this. So here you can see I did it on here. I had my 2 strips lined up at a 90-degree angle and I sewed that seam and I trimmed away all this excess. Then I press my seam open. That reduces your bulk even more. And then I press the whole long strip in half lengthwise. And then I have that seam spread out along my binding. Yeah, that works really slick. Okay, binding 101. So I don't know how much of this I'm going to get done in this video. I don't think I can do the whole thing. I'll show you how I sew some of it on, and then I'm going to flip you back around. Are you guys still there? Oh, okay. I'm going to carry all this stuff over to the sewing machine. Wish I had one of those great spaces that some people have where we could do everything in one spot, but I don't have that. I have a dyeing lab, so my dyeing space takes up a lot of space. Okay, so back over here. Oh, do you want to see outside? There's my snow. Yeah. It was really pretty yesterday, all stuck on all the trees. Still pretty. I don't know why we still have geese here. I think they would figure out it's time to go away. Sorry, this takes a little bit of maneuvering to get this set up. Okay, here we are. Okay, I'm going to show you my pinwheels. So to make the pinwheels, you cut 2-inch squares. So 2-inch squares out of the back, the yellow, the lighter color, and then I used 8 other colors. Oh yeah, I know. Kim's commenting about the snow. It was way too early for me too, and we got 7 inches yesterday. And then they said the sun was going to come out today, and it hasn't yet. But oh well, we just deal with it, right? It'll be gone by the weekend. Fingers crossed. Oh, I'm just so glad I don't have to go anywhere. That's a bonus. Okay, so then I have 8 different colors that I use, and we cut 2-inch squares out of those. Then you take 1 2-inch square of each of your fabrics and line them up right sides together. So it's like this. And then I draw a line down the middle from point to point. Okay, this is all in the directions, but just kind of showing you how I did it. So here you can see, my drawn line down the middle, and then you stitch 1/4 inch on either side of that line. Then, let's see. I wouldn't normally do this with my tiny scissors, but then you cut them apart on that line you drew. And if your fingers work, voila, you get little half square triangles. It is so much easier to make them this way than to cut triangles and try to sew them together, because when you do that, you're dealing with this bias edge, and it's really difficult, and your machine wants to eat up these corners. So it's a lot easier to do it this other way through the middle of that square. And I just chain piece, do a whole bunch at once, and it goes really quickly. Then you sew them together. You need 4 of these of each colorway, and then you just sew them together into your little pinwheels. There. And then, I haven't trimmed this, but you know, you get all these funky little ears that you trim away. This one is all trimmed square and pressed. So that's what you get. And that's how you make all these little pinwheels on the border. It's pretty easy. Frankly, I don't do anything that's hard. Some stuff takes a little longer, but I get impatient, and so I like to do things that are fast. Okay, so now I am going to show you the probably correct way to put on a binding, and it is not always the way I do it, but we're going to sew the binding onto the front of the quilt, and then we will bring it around to the back and hand stitch it. Okay, that's not usually what I do. If I was going to enter it into a competition, that's what you have to do. But if it's just for hanging in my booth, for a pattern, for a gift, for me, nobody cares. So it's a lot faster, and then I don't have to do the hand sewing. I sew the binding to the back, and then I wrap it around to the front, and I top stitch it. And I wish I had something right here to show you. I'm sure I do. Hate to step away, but nothing I can just grab. Here, let me look over here. Nope, that one didn't do that way. Wouldn't you know it? Everything is so proper. Hanging right here. Oh well. Okay. Back to our binding. We're going to do it this way anyway. We're going to stitch it on the back side. And I like to start on the bottom. I don't think it matters. You start anywhere you want. Just don't start in a corner. And I cut this binding hoping I have enough. I'm not sure. I might need to add a little extra on the end. So it's going to be really close. So I'm just going to start kind of midway in the middle. And I think I'm going to move you guys a little bit. Let's see. You can see better there. Okay, so I usually leave 6 to 8 inches tail, but I'm not, yeah, I'm going to do that, 6 to 8 inches. But I'm thinking it's going to connect right in the middle of my bottom of the quilt. So I'm going to start here, about 6 inches down. And I'm going to use one of these Wonder Clips. The rest of them. Okay, now instead of pinning the whole thing, which I used to do that a long time ago, and if it's your first binding, that's probably a good idea. But after you've done a few, I don't know, I don't find like that I need to do that. I forgot to show you while we were over at the table, but before you put the binding on, you want to make sure it's square. Okay, so it was laying flat on the table, and I used rulers to line it all up and trimmed it all square and made sure it was all nice and flat and square. okay? Because if you get any wobbly things on your border, then your binding is just going to be wobbly. So you need to get that fixed first. But just if you just sew your binding onto the quilt, you can still get it to be a little wobbly. I have a question. I wish I could find it. You know what, Gwen? It's my least favorite too. But when you get to the binding, then it's finished. So it's kind of like celebrating. But that's why I do it. I like to do it all by machine. It's just quicker. All right, so I have my first clip in. And now I am just going to stretch my binding a little bit, but not stretch the quilt, okay? And then I will put in on another clip. When I get down here, got words there. I can't tell if you can see. All right, so this is how I do the corner. And hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I've got it straight down to the edge, and then I'm just going to fold it back on top of itself, okay? So the binding is straight back, and then we're going to fold it into a 45-degree angle, just like you want your binding to be when it's sewn, okay? Make sure it's nice and taut. I'm going to put another binder clip right here. And I'm going to put another binder clip right there, holding down that fold. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this side, and I'm going to sew up to where this fold is, and I'm going to stop. Okay? And then we're going to start another seam. Because if you do a continuous seam and you stitch over that corner, it doesn't turn as nice a miter. So I will sew this, and then we can show you that miter. I have my walking foot on. Oh, gotta move my binder clip over a little bit. Okay, I'm just gonna sew right up to that little folded corner. Do some back stitch. Cut my thread. Okay. Now can you see how I just stitched right up there? And this is loose. You don't want to stitch that down. Okay, I'm going to put another, pulling my binding taut, put another clip on there because I have to release this one. Okay, now I'm just going to move this down. What I need to do is I need to get this folded thing loose out of there. Okay, and we're going to fold that miter going the other way. So before I had that little triangle folded this direction, now I'm going to fold it this direction. So we still get this little triangle that makes our miter. Get it lined up so we have that little triangle standing there, and I'm just going to fold it over onto the top of where we already sewed. And I'm just going to finger press right along the edge. So right here, because we've got those layers of binding underneath, I can feel along the edge. I just put a little crease there with my fingernail. And that shows me where to start sewing again. Because I don't want to sew into that little triangle corner. We need to keep that free. So I put my needle right down, 1/4 inch in, right along that little crease I made. Take a couple stitches and back stitch. as I go along this edge, I'm just going to pull this binding tight, but don't pull on the quilt underneath. That just prevents you from getting a wonky binding. Man, if I were watching me just stitch a binding, this would be the time where I'd have to find something else to do. So, thanks for sticking with me. All right, stop there so I can reach this out and show you. Okay, so you can see I have my little triangle that's just loose. So when we go to turn this, can you see? When we go to turn this around to get our miter, fold that in, and you see, got a nice little mitered corner there. It just, make sure it's in the camera. It turns out perfect. Let me sew a little bit farther so I can move it. There, see? Isn't that, it's just perfect. And then on the back side, you're going to fold one in, fold the other side down so they're quarter inch in, and you just kind of use your fingers to make that little miter. Then you can hand stitch it, but I'm going to machine stitch it. So that's, I don't know, that's probably long enough. I'm going to finish this. I will save the very end for you though, or maybe, yeah, I will show you that next week, okay? We'll do that. So how to connect the ends of the binding when you get to the end. Even if it's not on this one, I'll just have something else to show you, so I can show you how to do that, because it's going to take me a while to get all the way around here. And I can show you how to top stitch too, if you want to see how to top stitch the binding on. So let me know in the comments if you want me to show you how to do that. Or not. Okay, so don't forget our coupon code is SNOW25. That's all caps. And if you haven't yet commented or liked the video to get in on the drawing. Otherwise, if there's anything else you'd like me to show you, to demo, let me know in the comments or send me a message. Oh, another question. I've not seen binding done like that before. Oh, yeah, thank you. I used to teach quilting classes a long time ago, and I just find that to be the easiest and neatest way to do it. Another question. Just the top stitching. Okay, excellent, Kim. We'll do that next week. We'll finish the binding. I'll show you my little trick on how to do that and still get that mitered seam so that you don't have all that bulk. And we'll do top stitching on the binding. Okay, that's a good plan. All right, good. Carol wants to see it too. All right, so we'll see you guys here next week. If you can't make it, you can always watch the video in replay. I'm almost done with my pumpkins, so maybe we'll be binding the pumpkins. Nice and slow wins the binding. That's right. Take your time and don't get into too big a rush. But most importantly, don't sew down this little corner. That's the ticket on keeping that nice and smooth and easy to turn. Okay. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next week. And maybe it won't be so snowy, but the snow, whatever you say about it, it's a good reflector of light, because I didn't have to dig around with my inside lights as much since I have this great light coming in The sun's not even out, but there's a lot of it, so that was good for a video. Okay, so I've said bye so many times now. That's like a Minnesota goodbye, they say. Have a great day. See you next week. Bye now.